All right, so we will call the meeting to order for our 19th regular meeting of council at 7 o'clock. And I will start out with our land acknowledgement statement. The town of Colhurst is located in traditional Blackfoot Confederacy territory. We honor the Blackfoot people and their traditional ways of knowing and caring for this land, as well as all Indigenous peoples who have helped shape and continue to strengthen our community. So following that, we'll move into the adoption of the agenda. Would somebody like to make that motion? Go ahead.
Yeah, I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Great, thank you. Is there any discussion on this? There's none, we'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Next, we have the adoption of the previous minutes from the 18th regular meeting on October 18th. You'll see those in our package. Would anyone like to make a motion to adopt them? Oh, go ahead.
I move that we adopt the minutes as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That is carried. All right, so we do have some business arising from the minutes. And CEO Kaufman, shall I turn this over to you for these items? First being the fleet purchase.
Please, if you don't mind. Yes, 4 items that arose during that meeting. The first is fleet purchase. Members of council recall that you approved a motion to transfer up to $42,000, and that will be supplemented by an additional 18. You'll be happy to know that operations has managed to save you $22,000. They did actually, and they had it lined up prior to the meeting. The reason why we asked for up to 42 is in case the deal fell through or there was a problem with the truck, but we actually ended up securing a 2018 a vehicle with 18,000 kilometers on it. We have a 2-year, 40,000 kilometer bumper-to-bumper warranty. So
Nice.
operations is quite happy. It's a vehicle that's going to carry them through till the end of the replacement period, which should be 12 to 15 years. So thank you very much for that, and kudos to staff for their diligence on that. The second item is the clay pile at the wetlands. In my written report, I identify November 2nd to 4th being dates when it will be completed. It's actually done. The pile has been removed. The accompanying hole has been filled, and the topsoil is down. So that work is done. I've also notified Alberta Health Services on that because they have been monitoring the situation as well. So that has been rectified. I was asked at the in November, the October 18th meeting as well about property fire that occurred in the county. It's right adjacent to our border. I did speak with somebody from the county who identified that they are aware of it. They will go through the process of bylaw enforcement to ensure that the property is actually dealt with in a timely manner. They did apologize for it sitting for as long as it sat, but they will be following up on that for us. I am to keep them notified as to what's happening along there. And finally, a request regarding signage on the berm for Sundance adjacent to Highway 3. I actually spoke with Mr. Oh dear. And I apologize because I've known him for years. It will come to me at 2 o'clock in the morning and I will email members of council. I did speak to the gentleman who was involved with the Sundance subdivision, and he's actually stated that the sign can come down, so operations will go and take it down as that is about 90% full in the neighborhood, so, which is good news.
Great, thank you.
If I can, sorry, just
Yes.
add one thing, because now's a good time to do it before we lose people watching. If members of council do receive calls, operations is actually out tomorrow replacing 2 water valves on Aspen Road. Aspen Road will be closed between 51st Avenue and Spruce Drive. So 2 water main valves are being replaced there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there any clarifying questions that anyone has from that? Councillor Ackerman, go first.
Thank you. Just to clarify, will those repairs just be tomorrow, or is it going to be a couple days? Do you have any idea of the timeline?
The theory is tomorrow, however, it may be 2 days at the most.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes. Were residents affected by this already notified?
Oh, yes, my apologies, yes. Hand-delivered letters were given actually to all the residents that were going to be, that were going to be affected by this. Staff actually provided that last week, I believe.
And then I do have a second question, follow-up question on the, maybe a comment, I guess, not a question, but the clay or the coal pile at the wetlands is now gone. I received a message from one of the residents who was back there and he said it looks much better. So they seem to be happy with the way it's turned out.
Good. We do thank people for their patience. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on here to delegations, citizens without formal notice. We don't have anyone here today, so we'll just move right along then to business of council. So the first one that we have here is the town council's 2022 to 2025 strategic plan. And so happy to have this on the agenda after our time this summer that we spent working on this. And then first of all, I would just like to open it up to council to talk a little bit about the strategic plan and get your thoughts on that, and then we'll move on from there. So I'm going to start with, who would like to start?
I wondered, prior to a conversation around this, I'm wondering if I can make a motion on this one as well, on this strategic plan.
Yeah, you're welcome to. Yeah.
Thank you. So we're going to have some conversation about it tonight, which is wonderful. But my hope is, I would like to make a motion that we do delay approval of the strategic plan until our council meeting of November the 15th. And that would allow us time for feedback from our community. We'd like to engage our community in this, as well as time for an open house on this.
That's great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So then now I will open it up for discussion from anyone if you'd like to add anything in on this.
On the motion?
On the motion, yeah,
Or just discussion.
or just, or motion or any discussion about the actual, about the strategic plan. Good.
Thank you. So yeah, I love that, what you said about our strategic plan. I'm a really big fan of it. It was a process I was very impatient to start, and I mentioned it several times throughout the last year. I really feel like it's going to be a guiding document for our council moving forward to base decisions off of, and to boldly plan for our future, to boldly plan. Going through the process with you guys and was really important to gather all of our ideas and resident feedback and prioritize our goals for this term. I really love the vision statement because it speaks to our rich and vibrant history, as well as gives a nod to our inspiring future. I believe that the statement encompasses where we're at in this moment of history, and I feel we're really on the bridge of bridging the gap of change with sound planning and visioning for future years. I also really love our mission statement. It speaks about caring for each other. I believe that encompasses the wonderful attitudes and initiatives of our wonderful residents in Colhurst. The residents of Colhurst are kind-hearted and community-centered, so I really love our mission statement. And yeah, I believe our priority lists, so our goals, tackle the issues that we brought to the strategic planning table, and I really look forward to using this living, breathing document as a guide for the remainder of our term.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Go ahead, Councilor Pierce.
Like Councillor Florence said, it was an involved process that we went through, but I was really glad that I got to go through that experience with everyone. It was good to include some administration with us at the same time too, so we could have their perspective. One thing that I really enjoyed about the process was we used the feedback from the community survey that we had out there. So it wasn't just our opinions that put this document together, it was the community as a whole with the input that residents had provided. Like Councillor Florence had mentioned, I think it's a great document. There's a lot of things that we can be proud of in here. I hope that the community likes it as much as we do, because I'm really looking forward to using it going forward.
Great, thank you.
I think if I could just to expand on what Councillor Evans is speaking about, we heard really strongly from our community during election. And I think that this document reflected that. What I was most impressed about was how aligned when our community gave feedback and when they were fully engaged about what was important to them, and when we stepped in and started doing our planning, I was really impressed at how aligned that was. So I think this is really a true, all-encompassing document. And yeah, I'm excited. I love this process.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Do you have anything that you'd like to add? If not, that's okay.
And I think I want to, our goals that we set out for this, our priorities, think do reflect, like you're saying, so, all about the things that were heard during the election. And the things that we continue to hear from our residents, that we want more community engagement. And two of our 4 goals are around community engagement, right? So I'm pleased that we put that as such a high priority, really, in my mind. So, and then our other goals, I think, do reflect, providing exceptional service and incentivizing businesses, right? Those are things that I think just will improve our town going forward in the future, right? So.
Thank you. And I guess my thoughts on this too are just to invite the community to participate in taking a look at it and providing feedback on this. So just to reiterate, Councillor Caldwell made a motion to receive, tell me if this works for you, to receive the strategic plan as information, and that approval for the council strategic plan be postponed until November 15th. Our regular meeting of council, following opportunities for community feedback and input through an open house and inclusion in the newsletter and the town's website.
Fantastic. That was very well said. Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you for that lovely motion.
You're very welcome. In saying that, I again will call the question.
Just if I
Yes.
may, Madam Mayor, sorry to interrupt,
Yes.
I just want to confirm, members of council would like to have a public open house then on this, an opportunity to invite residents to provide feedback? Is that the
That's what
direction
everybody
council would like to
says.
provide?
That's clear.
Okay. If I can suggest for process and certainly feedback for council, what I would propose is an open house here at 7 p.m. next Tuesday, since members of council will be here anyway. If items 7B and 7C pass as presented, your committee of the whole meeting can actually begin at 6 p.m. and you can adjourn at 7 to greet community members who come in to provide feedback and take the opportunity to meet and discuss with them. And then once you feel that the stream of people ends, we can put barriers up outside and stream people in certainly. Then you can return actually committee of the whole and complete the business. It just may be a more beneficial use of council's time if that's okay. Otherwise, what we'd like to do as well is post the strategic plan to the website tomorrow. It's not included in the public agenda package because this is council's big reveal. So we'll get it up on the website tomorrow, and I'd like to actually see if it can be included in the newsletter so that everybody receives it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
If I may, please.
Yes.
So recognizing it's a draft copy, but it's an
Absolutely.
ongoing working document. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
So by accepting it for information this evening, that allows it to become a public document, or do we have to do any further to?
No, you've received it as information. You will, your motion, I believe, deals with approving it, adopting it as your strategic plan in 2 weeks' time, following community feedback. So it will be identified as a draft. Just made note here to make sure that that's on there before it goes out. Thank you, good point. And when you come back on the 15th, then you will have had 2 weeks' opportunity for for community feedback on it as well. If you wish to make any amendments to it at that time, that's the time to do it.
Wonderful, that's great.
All right, thank you for that. Go ahead.
Thank you. So just a question about the process for the open house and the details for that. Will we have like signage printed or just kind of walk the residents through it, or like what will that actually look like, the open house? Is it?
What would you like it to look like, Councillor Florence and members of council?
Well, I think it's important to have some sort of something on the wall, like some sort of, I mean, it doesn't have to be top of the line signs, but something that kind of says like, these are the pillars, these are the goals, right? Or somehow some way to visualize that and maybe put it out in a way that we can talk to it. And then I think it would be good if, again, if we were all here and maybe next to our specific station and really just breathing life into it and really just speaking with residents about it and that. So I was just curious about those little details, really, signage.
Okay, so some visual representation of the document and maybe the key points, synthesize them to one larger page that we could perhaps post or have around somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If I can just keep going for a sec, thank you. I follow a few other towns around us, and one town that I think did really great with letting the residents know about the strategic plan was Fort McLeod. And they did exactly what you had suggested, like opened up the chambers, but they had all the signs around and they were doing live streams and contests, and it was really engaging, and like I wanted to go to it. And so my takeaway from that is that hopefully that we can be very engaging and get our residents to come out and speak with us.
Live streams and contests?
Yeah, it's great.
All right, if there's no further, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That is carried, thank you. All right, so we're looking forward to that for next week. And hopefully having a lot of people coming out to chat with us, all of them streaming in, right? All right, so moving on to the next item that we have here is the second reading of bylaw 438-22, a bylaw to amend the procedure bylaw to look at the change of the start time for meetings. So we did have our first reading on October 18th, 2022. And so would somebody like to make a motion for the second reading of this?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay.
I move that the council give the amendment to bylaw 438-22. Let me start this one over again. I move for the second reading of amending bylaw 438-22, a bylaw to amend bylaw 422-21, the procedural bylaw, to change the start time of regular council committee of the whole meetings to 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you. We'll go, is there any discussion?
I did try to get some feedback from people, and feedback that I got was mixed. Such a small change that I don't think it's seemed to be significantly impacting the ability for the community to engage with council meetings regularly. I had about 50-50 in favor of 6 and 50-50 in favor of 7. The people who said 6, I didn't really receive any feedback as to why that was better. I guess it just must work with their schedule better, maybe kids' bedtimes or something, I don't know. But 7 o'clock, I did hear that it was tricky from people getting off work and then being home and having dinner and being home from a council meeting. So that was their feedback from people who preferred 7 o'clock p.m. But like I said, like the feedback was roughly, the people I talked to anyway, was about half in favor, half for 6, right? Or half for 6, half for 7 roughly. So I think somebody said to me that why not try it at 6 and see how it goes.
Thank you. So, any other discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Great, it's still carried.
Yeah.
All right, so then we do have our third reading. Would somebody like to make that motion to do the third reading for this?
Did you want to make them? Yep, I can make that motion.
Okay,
For
great.
reading. Thank you.
Okay,
And given that it was just read through on the second reading, do I have to reiterate it on the third reading?
here, read this part.
Thank you.
For clarity, it is always best.
For clarity.
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay. So I will move the bylaw number 438-22, a bylaw to amend the bylaw number 422-21. The procedure bylaw receives third reading.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any discussion? There's none. I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Okay, so the next item that we have here is CAO request for decisions. Do we have anything for that today?
Nothing.
Great, okay, thank you. So now we move on to the administrative reports, starting with the Chief Administrative Officer report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of council have my written report in front of them. Are there any questions arising from the report?
So did you have your hand up?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not paying attention. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask about the Yeah, I guess the ribbon cutting ceremony. We'll have to schedule one, you're saying, right?
Yes, absolutely. So on the solar project, we're just waiting for the final components of the work. It's being hooked up to the SCADA system and then to have the project commissioned. Once it's commissioned, council can have a ribbon cutting ceremony. And the suggestion was actually made by the director of operations that it not be ribbon, but it be an extension cord.
That's awesome.
Not plugged into anything, so for health and safety, it's taken care of, but it would certainly be a different way of visualizing or visually demonstrating that we are cutting the power cord to the grid, at least in this particular aspect. So once that we have a firm commission date, I can certainly advise council, and then we can get on the process of organizing an actual ribbon cutting.
Great. Is there any further questions? Councillor Ackerman?
Thank you. Just with regards to the QMP accreditation, I was just curious, was this championed and instigated by our development officer? I think either way, it's a great thing, but I was just kind of curious if that was a personal endeavor that they undertook.
Do you know what? I honestly don't know if this is something that our development officer initiated, but she has certainly been carrying the load of accomplishing all of the requirements, dotting the i's, crossing the t's, and all the documentation. I know she's been going back and forth for some time with Safety Codes Council. It's been a tremendous amount of work for her. I don't know if she initiated it, but certainly she is, as I state, to be commended for the work that she did on it.
I think if you could pass along a thank you from council.
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Any other questions?
You know, I actually don't have a question, but I have a big thank you. I very much appreciate the purchase of a second electronic traffic management device. I think that would be very beneficial in our community. And the communication about CP rail. That has been increasing. Their time at our entrance has been increasing. So any efforts that you can make towards that is just fantastic. Thank you very much.
If I may,
Yes.
on both of those, and perhaps just to touch on the third that it relates to, CP rail first. As I understand it, there's been a structural change to the way things are done in Calgary, which has actually resulted in increased traffic, increased requirement to switch and move vehicles here in Lethbridge, which means, in Colehurst or at the KIP rail yard, which means that longer trains are actually being run through here, which means pulling up, blocking the intersection in order to move all of the cars around. I think we all recognize and respect what CP has to do. Grain cars especially are incredibly long, but they don't have enough space there as is. So I monitor because I'm a train nerd. I don't sit and stare at it for the half an hour, but I do keep track of the times. I pass it on to the director of operations who then advises CP. They are aware of it and they do actually respond. The situation on the 26th was a little bit unique in terms of the way that it was explained to me, and is a bit of a one-off. They're not sitting there for half an hour. It was tricky because we actually had a dual tractor trailer parked there who was trying to back up and traffic kept going behind him. So I went out and helped him navigate around the corner and get on his way. So it was just a bit more involved than what they normally are, at least the view from my office. So yeah, we will continue to communicate with CP and see if there are things that we can do to help.
My understanding is that the federal communication around trains blocking, it went from a requirement to a recommendation. Is that correct?
I don't know. All I've been advised is that it's 5 minutes stopped. So if it takes a train while it's still moving 5 minutes to cross, there's actually, that's acceptable. And recognizing the speed one needs to use to enter a full yard, I think it's imperative that we be patient while they're crossing. It's when it's actually stopped. And the incident on the 26th or 25th, it was fully stopped and it was not moving anywhere for almost a half an hour. That's definitely beyond a recommendation in my humble assessment. But that has been the longest one that I've seen since I've been here in a month. On the traffic enforcement sign, the data that we're gathering actually on this as well can also help inform the road usage, because not only are we monitoring vehicle speed, we're actually monitoring vehicle movement. So it's helping us as well in terms of providing the data necessary for making decisions on road upgrades, paving, safety, things of that nature. It ties into the community peace officer who started today. It was his first day. His name is John Harasmuk. John's from Lethbridge and has been commuting for 8 years to Pincher Creek, so he's very happy to start working for us here in Colehurst. I think he was very relaxed on his 15-minute drive today. So thank you for that. He brings 8 years of CPO level 1 experience. He actually has a great deal of experience on policy and bylaw development as well. And he has taken the time prior to starting to reviewing our bylaws and has some recommendations to help streamline things, both from the governance side as well as the operations side. The big thing to note, though, is due to processes with the Solicitor General's office, it's going to take us, I have a month in the written report, it's going to be possibly 6 weeks or longer. There is a process involved in terms of the Solicitor General appointing this individual to our community. It can be a smoother process because he's coming straight from another municipality. However, we are at a bit of the whim of the Solicitor General. So in the meantime, he's going to be undertaking bylaw enforcement. When he's a full community peace officer, he does bylaw as well. Right now, he can only do bylaw. He cannot do the CPO enforcement aspect of it. So he will be out engaging in some of the situations, some of the issues around. He is available. So if people have concerns on bylaw enforcement, absolutely, we can take care of those in the meantime. But he's not going to be driving the CPO vehicle, wearing the vest or the badges that say community peace officer. He cannot do that until the province actually appoints him to the town of Colehurst. So we're hoping that that's sooner rather than later, but we're looking at these 6 weeks at the moment, if not into the new year. There's enough to keep him busy. We just like him to be busier. That's all. And if I can, sorry, my written report, I'd really like to highlight the pumpkin composting. This was an initiative from the operations folks, and it's a way of actually removing incredibly heavy compost waste from our waste stream, so people aren't putting it in their garbage bin, because we take our garbage to the landfill and we pay tipping fees on weight. So if you're adding compostable material to your garbage, you're actually increasing the cost to the municipality. So the suggestion was made to actually set up at Miners Memorial Park the bins where people can come and take their pumpkins. Ashley in our office, on her own initiative, actually phoned local farmers and offered the pumpkins as it's not a silage, a feedage, a pumpkinage to those animals that actually feed on it. And we've had 4 farmers take us up on it, and they'll come in at their own time and cost between now and November 6th and pick up the pumpkins that they feel that they can use. And hopefully, the idea is to actually have little to no pumpkin waste in our garbage that's going to the landfill. So an internal initiative that hopefully the community can take advantage of and people will respect it. We've moved it from the compost or from the recycling depots so that we are limiting contamination on pumpkins for the farmers.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right, Councilor Barnes.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. This is an awesome report. I was especially excited to read about the pumpkins and that removal. I think that's a great initiative, and I'm happy that staff took that on. And I'm very excited for the community peace officer to start as well. And thank you for your diligence to that, as well as to our Director of Corporate Services who did a lot of work on that too. So very excited and happy to have things moving along. Thank you.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to receive the report? Yeah, go ahead.
I move that we receive the report of the CAO's report.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call question, all in favor? That is carried, thank you. All right, so now we'll move on to the Director of Corporate Services and go to your report.
Great, thank you. Prior to jumping into budget stuff, just wanted to say that today was actually Kathy McCann's 14th year of service.
Wow.
So he's been here 14 years. So just wanted to recognize her, congratulate her, and we have a conversation with her tomorrow, and congratulate her as well, because I did forget before, so. It's on my calendar, but busy day, so. But no, we're grateful to have her and the public services she gives to the town and for all that she does.
We'll congratulate her on our behalf, please.
I can do that.
Thank you.
So yes, we jump into budget. It's something I enjoy doing, and I'm not sure how enjoyable it is for everyone else, and how sane that maybe makes me or not. But it's always a fun exercise in problem solving and resource allocation to prepare something. In the document that was sent out to you, it starts off with the breaking out the personnel aspect of the budget. Personnel is a area that peppers throughout the entire organization. It's easier to deal with it as a single entity rather than go into each department and with things being reallocated to say, this one was down $25,000 because it was moved somewhere else. This one's up $25,000, and removes the confusion of, well, how come this area is costing so much more money this year than it did last year? It just helps to set that apart and then have that conversation as one separate discussion. So in the chart that I sent out, salaries, wages, benefits, see an increase from 2022 to 2023 of about $148,000. That comes in a couple of different parts. Parts of that being a cost of living adjustment for the current positions. That makes about $50,000 of it. And then the other part of it is reallocation and positions and new positions being added to in discussions with council over the last several months. It's been sort of made clear of what the direction that the council is looking of investing in recreation, public works, and making sure that the town can provide those services and continued services going forward. So just in the note, we took what was in discussions previously of a part-time fire chief, where the discussions had been, okay, maybe the town's going to move forward with a part-time fire chief, half-time. But in discussions with the current fire chief and what the organization was needing at the time, it was determined or discussed that at this time that role, half-time complement we're not quite there in needing that level of commitment for that role. So that freed up some funds available to reallocate elsewhere. Mainly being to fund the rest of a half-time rec coordinator position to make that a full-time position. So that would be one reallocation. There's an additional public works position that is not in 2022 at all, but it is a brand new position in 2023. And I've included the table that I included in a couple months back of just kind of where the town is at as far as its infrastructure 10 years ago to where it is now, and the amount of maintenance and care that is required on that just has increased, and just the amount of total number of employees the town has not kept up with that. And the public works team is noticing the need for additional assistance in being able to complete and maintain the infrastructure within the town. It also allows for succession planning, as several of the employees have spent a lot of years in their career and are ready to perhaps in the coming years enjoy the fruits of their labors.
That's well said.
And so it's a bit of maintaining what is there, but also trying to prepare for the future and trying to get some up to speed, depending on what level they come in at, to be able to continue and gain knowledge from those who are currently here, to be able to pass that on to a new person. Institutional knowledge is lost whenever someone leaves, and if we can mitigate that or reduce how much information is lost, the better we can, the better it can be. And then just budgeted some additional funds due to the recruitment of a new CAO, depending on what that path takes. It's some additional funds allocated towards salary for that. And I believe that is it for the positions. I'll stop there for personnel discussion before we jump into the rest of the budget.
Great. Any questions on that component? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question on the cost of living allowance. I couldn't find it, but I was under the impression that we had done a 2% increase at the beginning of the year, and that we were looking to maybe retroactively add another 2% in the summer. I can't remember if that happened or not. I know that was on the discussion table at one point in time.
To the mayor, to Councilor Atkins, that's not something I recall. I know there was a 2% increase done it for 2022. Perhaps before my time here, there was a discussion to have that before, but I couldn't. It's not a familiar topic to me at that point for that.
That does sound familiar. Could we request that you look into that to see? Go ahead.
Yes, I do recall debating that at the time, actually,
Yeah.
and the information that we were given at the time was that the COLA was at 4%, and we did debate whether or not going the full 4% or not, because we had only the interim budget at the time, and we weren't sure when tax revenues were going to land regarding our property collection assessment, so that was the reason why we didn't choose to do a full 4% at that time. And then when we had the full budget, when we were going to pass our full budget, we were supposed to reevaluate that. But we never did, so, okay. That's the history there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone else? Go ahead.
Previously, we had discussed the legislative assistant or something like that position, but I think when Mike was interim CAO, and I didn't see that mentioned here, I don't believe.
Through the chair, Councilor Poetry, that position would already be covered by budgetary funds that have already been approved in previous years. It would be no change to going forward.
And did we not look at that position being as well with the executive assistant or that we would combine those and just?
I just want to clarify where that funding is going, so.
Right. Anything else? If not, we can carry on. Thank you.
Yes, so jumping into got on the document I've got, what you'll see is the areas of the budget that revenue at the top, expenses below, and then several subcategories of revenues and expenses. And so what I got in the Word document is just what those changes are as they go throughout, and explaining what makes up the difference in those changes. So, for example, in the general municipal one, taxes are still, difference is zero, and what that allows is when the budget is passed, we would put whatever needs to be made up into that taxes line. That's what needs to be generated for taxes, that's how we balance the budget. But currently it's left at the exact same number, just so that number on the bottom shows on that overall impact page what our shortfall is going into these proposals. And then revenue from all sources is increasing revenue based on the franchise fees and the interest that would be earned at and just our bank, the general account for what we earn just by having money sitting there. I'll stop for questions after each section if there's any. If not, then we can continue on and just give you opportunity for discussion, let you know.
So for the taxes, because keeping them the same, it's a conservative number, I guess you're saying, presuming that will increase our assessment in the following years. Do you have a perspective on how much it increases average year to year through chair to the?
Through Chair Councilor Poultry, generally based on what I've seen in previous documents is that based on the assessment, there's about $45,000 to $50,000 that is generating an additional taxation based on the same mill rate that would be made available. Anything above that would require a mill rate would increase. One is a discussion for the time, but the determining of the mill rate is the byproduct of a formula where my preference it would be this number is what we need to run the municipalities, this X number of dollars. The mill rate is then determined by taking that number divided by the total assessment, and then that would then give us the mill rate number. So in comparing mill rates to municipalities is a very, I don't want to say dangerous, but it's a not as apples to apples comparison. You know, if a community is providing these services, you know, they have a rec center and a pool, and it's in their mill rate, and we don't have that, those mill rates aren't quite comparable because we don't offer the exact same services. And so it's to me, the mill rate is just the byproduct of calculations of what we need to run the municipality and deliver the services that the residents want and the council wants to deliver. So given this though, yes, there would likely be an increase to the mill rate. About, I can't remember I had a chart previously, maybe by 4 or 5%, and it adds, I don't want to say how much it would add to it at the average house. I can't remember, so I don't want to say, but there would be an increase in the end.
Thank you. Other questions? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, where did you say the changes in the LGFF or the MSI was? Which line was that?
That's not in here.
That's not in this
That's not in this. So those would be, what I've done is I've removed capital out of the budget because this is the operating budget, it's the capital budget. Capital budget comes separately. What this allows us to do now is to compare years to years, where by putting the capital into the budget, if you have a $5 million wastewater project, it's going to make your budget look $5 million. Actually, you put out your budget down $5 million. So this will allow us to analyze operating budget to operating budget, apples to apples each year. MSI operating is filtered throughout in various areas, some in administration, some in garbage collection, some in the cultural buildings, probably somewhere else, I can't remember off the top of my head. But LGFF funding would not factor into here because that would be use it for capital projects. So it would go into the operating budget.
Okay, thanks, Mike. My question was about the operating for the MSI, so I appreciate that, and I appreciate the splitting up of the two. I think it's going to make it easier to digest moving forward. So, sorry, you answered it and I just missed it. So what was the 79.74% decrease on the other revenue then? For on the bottom of the overalls? So there's an...
Off the top of my head, I couldn't say because throughout it'll be some up, some down. Because the overall one is going to be the net product of all of these documents. So it'll go throughout and say some of it would be We funded the strategic planning via reserve, the decrease in the amount being transferred to offset the cost of leasing, some asset transactions. It'll come out as we go through. Off the top of my head, I couldn't say exactly because the 61, because some of it's up, some of it's down.
But I mean, that's a big increase overall, right? So it's I get that it's broken down everywhere, but I mean, that's just a big loss of revenue.
Some would have expenses that are offset as well. So 31,000, if we get the administration budget, $31,000 of revenue removed, $31,000 of expenses removed. So it ends up canceling each other out and evening out. But overall, that would be the net. And I'll when we get those parts, we will discuss those in this. But the policing is the one that's the eye opening or the gateway one. So.
Yes, I think.
Anything else for this section? Go ahead.
It mentions franchise fees, is that covered in this?
Yes, that's in the general municipal one. That's it has based on the calculations that Fortis and ACRA sent us. We punch in the percentage and it tells us what those amounts will be. That has been added into this. So we will.
And I have a follow-up question too. What is the expense purchases from other governments? Is that what we're talking about, RCMP?
Yeah, yes, that's costs where we pay the RCMP, we costs for the water commission.
Worst?
Horse would fall under contribution to transfer payments. It's costs where if we get a service from Lethbridge County, that's where if we write a check, that's where it comes out, if it's out of that area.
All right, can we move on to the next section? Great.
So the next one is council. Not a lot of change here. Personnel one is a bit of just rounding of numbers. Personnel we're going to talk about. Council, I didn't include that first part, but it's rounding of numbers and then trying to move towards instead of a per meeting pay, it would be a monthly honorarium. There would be some politics to change before that happened, but it doesn't really change budgetarily whether it's whichever system is used. And then contracts and general services, just based on actuals, just an increase for the registrations and travel needs, and then also just an additional amount for consulting services. There was no budget in there for that, so if there's an initiative the council wants to do, this provides funds for running some sort of initiative or needing to cover cost of something that council is looking to accomplish.
Any questions on this area?
Yes, if I could.
Yes.
So traditionally, we would sort of look at expenses related to sort of training or HMA. Is that sort of also under contract in the general
Yes.
services? Okay, thank you.
Great. Anything else? No? Okay, move on to the next part.
Administration. So under conditional grants, it's just the adjustment for an MSI operating grant. And then the other revenue transactions, that's removing the reserve transfer for funding the strategic planning. And then expense is also removed below in the contract and general services. And in the auditors, there's an increase for the auditors to perform their services, and then some minor adjustments for various little areas of telephone, postage, insurance, and some minor adjustments for materials, goods, supplies, utilities for just aligning to the actuals. And then the other expenditure transactions is just removing the expense that was caused from that tax payment incentive that was ceased a couple months ago, that process of paying out the interest of the prepaid taxes.
Any questions in this area? None, we'll move on.
Actually, I apologize. I do, actually.
Yes, go ahead.
We had some conversation that as we sort of increase the personnel budget, that we may look at decreasing contracted services, particularly in relation to public works. Is that, I mean, I guess we can't solidify that in place yet, right? This,
I think it would take some time to figure out what some of those needs are, but there's potential for the changing of that. It's, I think going forward, to be looking at it, yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, just to follow that up, I just want to challenge that a little bit because I sometimes have in mind, and I know that we've talked about this year, that we want to contract out more stuff. So I think that that's definitely not something that we've reached any decision on, whether, how that comes up would be staff, asking for a decision. But, my hope would that be, whichever way it happens, is that, we're doing a cost benefit and finding the most cost effective way to do it. Whether that be with our own staff or contracting it out.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. There's nothing else for this. Let's move on to, is it fire department is next?
Yes.
Great.
So again, this one, very little change, just $1,000 in the contract services for just insurance going up. The insurance was based off just, I took the past, I think 5 or 6 years and what the increases have been each of those. I took an average of the last 3 years, so insurance can apply that way. We don't receive that invoice until usually February. So this is just, and insurance costs are just a averaged estimate of what the increase likely would be. So we will know those figures a little more surely in the winter.
Questions? Go ahead.
Yes, does for the revenues, what is the grants in lieu? Could you clarify that?
So this is the, if there's a call out in the county, and then we go out and we get funds or that they pay for the services that we go out and maintaining the fire and taking care of things in the county as part of that.
Further questions?
If I can just add to that, the current contract with the county, as I understand it for fire, is they've gone from a flat rate, per annum flat rate, to actually on service call. So if a truck goes out, it's $600 an hour. I'm not certain if that's the full price, this is the example price. If 2 trucks go out, it's $1,200 an hour, and so on and so on. So there's less predictability in terms of the revenue stream unless the county decides they want to go back to a flat rate. But that can also include MVCs on various county roadways and things of that nature as well. So it's not just fire, it's basically any response into the county.
can we put that on the committee of the whole for conversation on that contract with the county?
What about, don't we also provide services to other, is it just the county? Because I know we've had calls to Lethbridge.
It likely that, I don't know all the actors that have been on it, but it would be, if services are go out and we are invoicing someone for it, that's where that's being captured.
Great. If there's something else for this, we will move on. You see with emergency measures, there's no changes there. So if we can move back to protective services, unless you have anything.
Oh, there is a big change
Okay.
for the emergency measures. So for personnel for the expenses, there's a change of minus 67%. And I was just wondering,
Just the reallocation, the fire chief position was allocated to both the fire department and emergency measures. By reallocating those funds, and just maintaining the honorarium for the part-time fire chief, though that wasn't required that much in the emergency measures, it got reallocated. And there's still funds in there to compensate those involved in that. But it's not, and majority of it is in the fire department budget. This one deals with the den.
Okay. So then moving on to protective services.
Yeah, so the protective services, there's a decrease in the fine revenue, just to align with actuals and to better align with what that looks like. The $25,000 decrease is the we spoke in the spring about offsetting the cost of policing as it's going up. The way that it was budgeted when this first came out, that cohorts would then be paying for our CP services in this way. The way it was budgeted is it was taxed in 1 year, but it would be paid into the next year. So it ran through into surplus, and so it's using that surplus to then return to cover the cost of that. And then increasing the expense by from $100,000 to $150,000 this year, here in 2023. So we see a decrease in how much is being subsidized and an increase in the expense, and it creates quite the gap that has to be met with taxation, but it allows it to, it's recovering from the model that was set in place when this first came out.
Thank you.
Yeah, and some minor other
So I-
changes there.
Can I ask on this then? So this is a combination of both our payments for the RCMP as well as our peace officer program? Is that?
The purchasing of the governments would be only the our CP contract.
Yes.
The other part would be the community peace officer aspect of this.
Go ahead.
Is the RCMP requisition, is that the last increase for foreseeable?
I believe the chart is about that 150. Whether it goes up, it might. It started out at I think 50 or 75,000, and then it went up by about $25,000 each year. And I think I think the chart ended at 150, or I think it's going to continue on to 150. There may be some annual slight increases, but I don't think we've seen $25,000 increases going forward. So I think we have hit that cap at that point. It'll just be in 2024, we will remove another $25,000 of that subsidy transfer to help offset that cost. And then by 2025, it would be fully taxation and ease that growing expense into our CMP contributions.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. One of my questions was about how we mitigate that, so I really appreciate your comments about how we're going to do that, and I think that's really smart. And so just to clarify, this is still just that increased cost, we still haven't hit any retro payments or anything like that?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
If I could as well, Madam Mayor. So in the past, we would contract our peace officer to neighboring communities to generate revenue to sort of offset some of those costs. And I'm looking at the 2022 revenue versus the 2023. Is that reflected in there?
Yes, that is. Sorry, the grants in lieu is the contract for the services outside of town of Colhurst. We are contracted with the town of Village Barons, and that's where that amount is captured in the grants in lieu. But that's still a continuing service that we will be providing and earning revenue for.
Okay. There was a point when we were providing also for picture views and not level for picture viewed, and I suspect that won't be coming up in the future here. Be nice to explore different revenue streams for service revenue streams to offset some of these costs.
And I agree with that, Heather. I mean, it's not just about offsetting for us, but it's about balancing other communities as well. So
Yes.
so sharing resources between communities just helps everybody, right? Not just helps
Absolutely.
us,
Yeah.
helps them as well. So
Yeah.
I don't know how we explore that, but
Mhm.
it would be good to reach out maybe and see if there's opportunities.
So I know we provide garbage services, we provide peace officer, we used to provide by law, but once we moved to peace officer, it was just the barons. But we found that, when they tried to contract out, we could offer a much better price for them. So you're right, it's a benefit, sort of a win-win across the board. I'm kind of exploring the idea of our new CAO coming in. What might that look like for, say, Barons or our neighboring communities? Just explore those ideas. I think, is it Raymond that does that model? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's a tremendous benefit for some of the smaller villages around them as well as I don't know if that's something that we can do, but, yeah, definitely opening up the door to that exploration.
I think with that, one of the things that I would just want to be mindful of is that we're maintaining what we expect within the
Yes.
community.
Yeah.
Rather than just trying to offset it with additional revenue.
Yeah.
So that we are providing the service that we want our community to see.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is there any other questions or comments on this section here? If not, let's carry on.
So Public Works Common Services, the main change there is the 42,000 for the revenue from own sources. That is the removal of it's called an asset transaction. It's an accounting entry that has to be done. It doesn't belong in the operating budget, and so it's just being removed from there. However, it does have effects on how things were set up, that it makes a shortfall in revenue. So it's an unfortunate thing that needs to be changed. And there's the removal and materials and goods and supplies and utilities of the yard blocks and the grader tires that were approved in last year's budget. Those have been purchased, and so that amount was an additional amount last year, so it has been removed for this year. And then, with the yard blocks, there was a reserve transfer for those that has been removed.
Any questions on this area? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick question. The infrastructure review study, that was a capital project, I'm assuming? We had got.
The road assessment survey,
Yes.
that's in the following one, yeah, but I believe it hasn't been completed, and so it's continued on the budget for 2023.
Go ahead.
So there is one note in here too, just right on the bottom, about the operational increase for natural gas consumption for capital project. We're not really getting into the capital project planning right now, that kind of gives a little bit of a nod to it.
Yes, so just a slight increase, I think it's gonna be $1,000 for the year in some additional shop bays, was the project we're putting forward in terms of capital budget. And it will need just an additional amount to keep it nice and toasty and warm, enough, not too hot, but enough to protect the equipment and keep it serviceable. That would be, if the project is approved, this would go ahead. If the project is not approved, then it's not operating budget.
Anything else for this section? If not, we'll carry on to roads.
Okay, so for any roads, main things are some just additional funds for performing road maintenance, and then the budget correction to remove a capital project from the operating budget. 10,000 for the road maintenance and $30,000 removed for the capital project that was in there still.
Questions? None, we'll carry on. For stormwater, I see that we have no changes here, but is there anything before we move past that one? If not,
Right, what is the revenue from on this one?
There is a stormwater fee on utility bills, and that just is to maintain, it goes towards maintaining the infrastructure of stormwater maintenance. So I think it's a $5 charge per month. And that is the contribution transfer payments, there's $70,000 there, so it's kind of the utility payment comes in and it's put into a reserve to deal with stormwater infrastructure.
right, so we'll move on to water.
Not a lot of change here, although we did just have a meeting with the Water Commission people in the city of Lethbridge about their rate increases, and so we will have to, based on the agreement, we can't be lower than their rates, so not showing in this proposed document are what those rate increases would look like. That would come forward again in the future to show what that is. This one is just based off of percentage increase that was in there already, and I didn't have enough information to make a change. But knowing that there will be there must be an increase based on the agreement. These figures will change slightly, and if there's a corresponding expense, then that expense would change as well for us acquiring the services. So those are changes that you will likely see in the next iteration of this.
Just a question about the increase, is there any rationale given as to why they were increasing it?
None was given at this time. I think when I have had increases in previous experience, there's just increased operating expenses. If the staff are receiving increases, then it has to be covered some way. Or if there's increase to parts and supplies, it has to be covered some way, and they've covered it by. I can't say why they made their increases. That would be my assumption is based on that, and then just our agreement is we can't be lower than theirs.
Right, anything else for water? No, move on to sewer.
Yeah, no, same sort of thing. We'll have to look at what that rate change will be, and if there's a corresponding expense change as well.
Are we held to that same agreement?
Yes,
That's what I
the same sort of setup.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Just looks like with our water, we're doing well to stay about that. To have a good balance, I guess, right? In terms of our revenue stream. But then with our sanitary, we're a little bit of a deficit there, right? I guess I'm trying to understand why that is, if we're supposed to be higher or
It's supposed to be self-sustaining,
self-sustaining.
our services.
I guess you balance the two out, they're self-sustaining, but yeah, it's just individual item, I'm curious, I guess why the sewer one is lower.
I haven't done a full analysis of something I have been looking at, wanting to complete with Director of Operations to see in, out, what is looking at, how is this looking? The water is offsetting taxation in general, and then the sewer is requiring subsidization via taxation. One other option is to, with that public works, new public works employee, is to cover that, is $22,000 in personnel, is to put that towards the water rate as well. So we have to make the increase that we're required to based on our contract. Then to cover that also, the $20,000 with utility bill or utility rate change for water, and same with the sewer would be to offset those costs. But there's not it's not affecting taxation in any way.
Utilities, waste collection, whatever, so.
So those are, because I haven't looked at those yet, but those are I think they're good models to use if there's an increase in the water and sewer budgets, to offset those with an increase in the rates. But it's, again, up to council decide if those rates change or not. So.
Any other questions? This one? No, we'll move on to the next part. We're on waste collection.
Same sort of thing. There's just we could increase the rates to cover the cost of the additional personnel added, and then there's just a slight insurance increase as well. Not a lot of change there overall in the budget.
Good. Any questions on this one? Go ahead.
Yes, I believe we had heard that the operations was looking at potential solutions for options for recycling. I'm just reminded of that as we look at this, that maybe that could be a committee of the whole agenda item in the future once the materials put together. So.
Thank you. Anything else on this one? Nope. Okay. FCSS.
Just a slight increase based on some actuals. We've seen actuals going up a bit each year. just an increase to keep up with that.
Questions? Nope. Okay, municipal planning and zoning.
Same sort of thing where we have a contribution to our planning commission, and just seeing those costs increasing and just adding so that to make sure we meet those requirements.
Questions, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, what does it cost, what does the ORSC fee, what does that cover for us?
I'm not the planner, I don't know, and I don't work in that area, I don't know exactly everything that they do.
If I might, it covers, there's certain things we pay a fee for, and then there's certain things we don't. And I should know this off the top of my head, but for example, the GIS program, that is something that that is something that we pay into, that is always an ongoing expense, right? And I believe there's some services that they provide, like sitting on our municipal planning committee, MSBA, sorry, and doing subdivision appeals and those kind of appeals as part of our standard fee for service. So, yeah, the kind of the day-to-day stuff is included in that, I would say. It's the things that are the additions, if when we're looking at revisions to our land use bylaw or new introduce of development plans or that kind of thing is where we would pay additional costs, but from the day-to-day operations, it covers those types of things.
Okay. Thank you. One of the things I was wondering about was if it paid for the assessment review board for a clerk, for ORSC or whatever, because we had appointed that. And I guess I was wondering that because we do have our in-house development officer, right? And I was just, I guess I don't fully understand the relationship between ORSC and what we do. And I guess, because I know that what we do brings in revenue, right? But then I see that we're paying a fee to ORSC, and so I was curious about that relationship, and if maybe you could explain more to me.
That might be a good idea though to have ORSC come and do a presentation. They haven't done one with us yet.
Well, we did have the dinner.
We did have the dinner, but they have come before council before to say, this is what, this is what we provide you as your municipality.
So I can, yes, certainly I can arrange Diane Orbath as our planner through ORSC. I can have her come and do a presentation, talk about what the services they offer, the services that we pay for, the services that we could pay for as well, update on the activities. The simplest way of thinking of the separation between what our development officer Sarah does and what ORSC does is Sarah's frontline involved with development. You want to build something in the community, you want to requires permitting. That's the work that she does with the community. ORSC is the planning side, deals with the planning side. So you want to create a subdivision. You want to be doing certain things within your municipality that involve different statutes, different order, a higher magnitude of decisions, a higher magnitude of planning and design. So think of ORSC as the planner, and our development officer is the one who's actually the frontline. You want to put up a garage, this is the process that you're going to go through in order to achieve that. Because the land is already zoned for a garage, the development officer is going to deal with that aspect of it. ORSC is about getting the land to the point of being zoned for a garage.
Thank you, and I appreciate your comments and speaking to that relationship, because reading this, I honestly wasn't sure. I know that we pay to Park Enterprises as well too, so there's a few moving parts, and I wasn't exactly sure how that all added up. And again, looking at things from the cost benefit, is this still the most cost effective way to do things?
So the QMP process actually permits Sarah now to issue permits on these different things. The permits require inspection. We don't have the capacity to do the inspections, so Park is actually a contract to do the inspections. So Sarah may issue a permit to put a gas widget, which is the extent of my knowledge of gas installs. She provides the permit for that. Park Enterprises will actually go and do the inspection that's been properly approved. Without the QMP, what that basically meant is you need to get a permit and put that in and have it inspected, and so nobody really had that enforcement behind it. Now it's, hang on, you need to have the gas permit, you need to have the electric over the building. Part is still of the organization with which we contract to come out and actually do the inspections to ensure that it's been done. So when I say in the thing that we're building our community safer, we really are. But we require those moving parts, of course, providing the planning, development officer providing the instruction and the guidance to our residents, in part to being sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Thank you. Sorry, one last thing. And again, this is coming up because I know that at that presentation that we sat through, where we went to Forest and went to the dinner and the presentation, it was less than a year ago. They were talking about that they did do some of these services for smaller municipalities as well. And so thank you for the information. I very much appreciate it.
I know that it was less than a year ago, but when you brought that up, I recognized that, remember we talked about how underutilized they were with us and how many opportunities we had, which is why I was thinking, you know what, it would be a great time to have them come and do a presentation and remind us of those conversations that we had, as well as that overview specific to our community.
Right, go ahead.
Thank you. If we have additional asks of our planner, say looking at the future area structure plan for that quarter section in town, is there funds available in the budget for that, or is it, like, I guess, how does that work if we have, maybe are looking at that, but if we want to bring up something throughout the year, is there kind of a contingency set aside for any future costs that we might be seeing?
I have to look into what is in that fully in each line item of this budget. Maybe. But it's something we could find out. And if there's something we're-
I'd appreciate that.
It's a good point, because like even with that purchase that we just did with the county, like that kind of came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, there would be some stuff that would have to go along with that.
I guess my thought process is just, I want to make sure that we're budgeting appropriately so that we're not missing out on opportunities down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I can, Madam Mayor, Diane from Orsk will actually be presenting to council, I believe, on the 8th
Okay.
about that county property.
Yeah.
And there's an opportunity to perhaps expand the question, not to a full Orsk presentation, but certainly to talk about what it is that they can offer beyond.
Thank you. This is kind of on the same vein, but a little bit outside of that. A while back, we had received an email from the people that are doing the quarter section about coming back to council. Has that been, are they coming to see us soon?
Was that through?
That was right when you first started, I believe.
That was 2 years ago. The engineering firm that was doing that was an ISL or MP? Stantec, yes. Stantec has actually canceled their return presentation at the moment. I did have communication with them 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And I had actually asked if they wanted to bump it up because we had a vacancy at our last Cal.
Okay.
Had the time to do it. And the response I got was, we're actually putting it off right now, possibly until the new year.
Okay, great. I just, when we were talking about those, that made me think of that. So, okay, perfect. Thank you. Sorry, kind of diverted there. All right, is there any other questions about the municipal planning and zoning? Then we'll move on to community services.
So I want to start off this one by saying community services is a misnomer on this one. It's an accounting nerds kind of thing, but these departments are built off of functions that flow through to the financial statements, and some of this community services one is dealing with programming and that side of community services. Generally, this one is more towards agricultural services. So some of these figures we pulled out from this function and moved to another area. But I wanted to show just the apples to apples as we kind of went through this. And so there's most of it should belong in different departments. But that notwithstanding, some of these changes are just to realign the budgeted figures with the actuals where they are closer to. So these are revenues for putting in signs that have had various businesses or advertising for programming events. Financial statement speaking, they don't belong in this budget, so they will be moved to a different area, but I wanted to show it as what you would have seen last year and what it is, but knowing that it'll be found elsewhere in the approved budget.
Any questions? None. We'll move on to subdivision land and development. There's no changes on here.
No changes there.
Any questions for this one? Go ahead.
Does do the, what are they called? I can't remember the name of them now. Offset levies fall under this, or is that a capital thing?
That'd be more of a capital type thing.
All right. If there's nothing else here, we'll move on to recreation and parks for facilities.
I did make a note on this one. I can't remember what these revenue differences, I didn't make the note on my paper. I think it's just I think it's a net change. Oh no, I didn't make a note, I was just looking too high. Okay, so there's an increase for the contribution from the county, and then also an increase for the facility rentals, the revenue from the facility rentals, and then a removal of the donations from disc golf course, and those kind of net each other out. And then in the expenses, again, the majority of that public works person is found here. That's why that number's quite a bit higher. And then there's a decrease in the insurance cost and then removal of the expense for the disc golf course to be installed.
So I just have a question with this, like with the increased recreation contributions from the county, how is that determined? Like, is that something that we just change every year, kind of like all the other requisitions that we see, or like how's that, I guess, negotiated, or how do we do that?
I'm not sure how it's negotiated, but there's a document that has the, I think it's based on the per capita amount.
Oh, okay.
The increase that is given out to all the municipalities in close proximity to the county, or that are within the boundaries of the county. So each community receives a certain amount based on the population.
Okay, so it's not necessarily dependent upon the, if all of a sudden we had a pool or if we had something else, we wouldn't see more for that. It's more so about the per capita type of thing.
I believe so. I
Okay.
think if there was if we built a pool, then we may want to revisit that negotiation, that agreement. But I think overall it is for whatever program the county residents participate in within the town limits.
Okay, thank you.
Programming.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question to that, but it's about the ICF funding as well, because the ICF that came into place, it was an MTA requirement for us to have shared things. To the best of my knowledge, it actually does depend on what rec facilities you have, as well as the number of people you have, and then the breakdown is like that. So it was the municipalities were tasked to get together and decide on the formula. And you asked how it went. I don't think it was an easy process to go through. And so my question is though, is if this amount changes, do we actually have to change the contract, or should it be something that we talk about with the county, or is it just simply a small change and it kind of just slides under?
They have provided a document that has 2021 is this much, 2022 is this much, 2023 is this much. They have there's a scale and a table of what it is for each year for each municipality. So I believe in the agreement, it would say that there would be a certain percentage increase depending on whatever that amount was decided. But they provide there's a document that says how much each municipality received in each of the XYZ years.
Yeah, and part of the agreement was, you're correct, Councillor Ford, as part of the agreement, the formula that was created was based on the types of facilities that you had. Some of them have much higher operating costs, so they attempted the formula to be as fair as possible. So, like a spray park, because it's less operational cost than say a pool or skating rink, it wouldn't fit within that formula in the same way. But my understanding is, though, if we were to build a larger facility like that with increased operating costs, we could then, I don't think it would be appeal, but request an update on the funding model, right? And I have to be honest, I think that the process that we went through in order to achieve that formula with the ICF was based on what each community had. Coldhurst, we were very polite. We were the really calm, polite ones because we didn't have the big skating rinks or the swimming pools, right? So, but I think we were just naturally calm and polite anyways. It was just a given.
I think it's interesting though, that like when you look at it, because it's essentially a requisition that they tell us how much they're going to give us. But like with other organizations, they tell us how much we have to give them, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, we're the ones receiving the money, but they're the ones telling us how much they would give us. I just find that interesting that it's kind of flipped. So I was just curious about that.
But it might just be based on it's based on population, and they're just telling us what the population is.
Yeah,
Tell them
but
what the population is doing.
Well, they basically say we have this much money and we're gonna split it up this way for you. So they are the ones who determined how much money they were going to invest and, and you know, I mean, it's dependent, right? In our area, it's difficult to be frustrated because our county doesn't have the same kind of revenue as, say, up north. Like the counties up north are able to help fund massive facilities. We don't have that here. And so, you know, it's difficult to be frustrated at when you just get this much money.
yeah, no, totally understand. I just think that it's just interesting how it's a little bit different there. But I would say this, right? And then just with, like, we have added the spray park since potentially that was developed. And I don't know if that increases or does anything to the formula. Like, I don't really know what that formula looks like, but it is something that probably should be reviewed occasionally.
Yeah, I think that's somewhere in that list of facilities, and I'm not sure the spray park, because it was in consideration when the talks were happening.
Okay.
It's just a big operation cost one.
Councilor Florence.
Oh, thank you. No, I was just gonna get on a little soapbox and say, I actually think the idea of I'm just gonna call it ICF. Yeah, the ICF is really cool because it's the province really saying like, hey, we need to regionalize, you know, we're gonna, you know, this is what we want it to look like, we're gonna set it up like that. And really, as we move towards that kind of everywhere and cost sharing and looking at things from a regional approach, I think it's a good, so I know I can't imagine how the process went trying to get to this point, but I think that it's kind of a neat thing actually. Like I get that it's more of a, you know, we gotta work through this and decide who gets what, but the idea of it and the idea of cost sharing, things like that, I think it's great.
Anything else on this one? No, so let's move on to cultural.
Okay, last one.
All right.
So revenues increased is just return to pre-COVID levels of renting the hall. We are seeing that to be quite a bit higher as based on current year and years prior to COVID. And then the other change is just a increase for insurance and a decrease for stationary needs and then moving personnel. Included in here is also the library contribution that we make to the Chinook Arch Regional, I can't remember the rest of it, the library. But it's the amount that was increased to per capita was still within the budgeted amount, so there's not a need to increase it further this year. There's, in the years, they have a table of what it looks like the next 4 or 5 years, and it's the increases are in the, you know, $100 or $200, $300 increases in the year's performance. It's not going to be, even if it does increase, it's not going to break anything.
So I just have a question regarding this. So per se, we wanted to explore the idea of actually like, getting a library here. Would that be something that would go in the capital budget?
To build a building, yes. To create plans, to do a study for it, to build a consultant in. Yes and no. It's without trying to over accounting things, we can put it in the operating budget, but all costs to build a capital asset have to be capitalized. So, but if there's discussion of what it looks like and what it would look like to bring the library and some studies done, not really, depending, unless they were, exorbitant amounts of, $50,000 or $100,000 to do a study, I wouldn't see it being that high. But if it's a few, a couple of thousand, then it could flow through operations and it would be an issue.
Okay, thank you.
So if we were looking at increased budget for different items, at what point do we put in the motion to request an increase in the budget line items?
I would refer to CEO Kaufman to raise direction on that.
Theoretically, November 15th would be your first opportunity, because council does need to deliberate and instruct the CAO, who then instructs the Director of Corporate Services to effect or make the change for the budget.
Okay, thank you. I guess increase or decrease, I suppose.
Is there any other questions under cultural or anything with that? Okay, so I guess what is the process now? So now you've told us all this great stuff, we've had conversations, what do we do now?
So part of that is a bit of what the CEO said of, if there's things that you want to see different in here, then that's for that meeting to discuss what those differences might look like. I had another thought that I've lost now. All right. So this shows same level of service, really. Same level of service, with the exception of whatever those differences and changes bring into it. If there's a drastic level of service that you want to see change, then that's something we would look at. Some of that is, we do see those different changes in the level of service of full-time recreation community coordinator, community development type of role. The public works additional employee there, again, we're seeing a different level of service there. So there's the 20, it has, basing on that, whatever the changes are, would be additional things. If there's further things that council would like to see, and it's kind of those discussions of, I guess, the 15th meeting, and then I go scramble away to figure out what that looks like and how to get that working into here and keep it in a reasonable area. And I think that's, and then this is the capital portion will come, I can't remember what date we have that one going, the 15th or the 8th?
The 8th. The capital portion will be next. I will be circulating the 2023, 2024, 2025 requests from the Director of Operations. It does not include anything from Fire at this moment. Fire is working on something, I just don't know when I'm gonna get anything from them. So that would come in a conversation on the 8th. Just as an addendum to my previous statement about motions being deliberated on the 15th. If you want information supporting them, you'll need to get in touch with me sooner rather than later, so I can scramble to provide as much information I can for your requests. The opportunity to deliberate on the 15th then leads to the opportunity to have a go away, investigate, change budget as required, come back and then have a conversation again on the 22nd, the committee of the whole meeting on the 22nd. We do have the opportunity, if members of council desire, to have a second committee of the whole the following week as well, because we have a 5th Tuesday this month. However, it depends on what's been accomplished to get to and where you're at.
Can I just ask a question? So in terms of like this like what you presented us with, this is a public document at this point? So these are things where we can talk to community members more about things. Okay.
You didn't intend that to be a closed session, did you? No. We forgot to turn off the camera and the microphone if that's the case, so.
Just wanted to make sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can I ask a question as well on the upcoming capital, and you indicated public works would be involved, but not necessarily the fire department. The change in our contract with the county, is that having a fairly large impact on our fire department budget, or?
No, well, that would be operational, and I
That's
think Mr. Passy has addressed that. In terms of, the fire department actually is looking at capital request. It's just about putting the information together, because I want to be, I want to ensure council that it's about presenting the best information, the most accurate information to you, as opposed to, this is what we want to do.
I guess I was looking at the capital component though, because, and I don't know what the contract looks like, but if we're not purchasing trucks on our own, that would have a pretty big capital implication.
To the best of my knowledge, and I stand to be corrected on this, the only vehicle that is in the works for purchase, and I believe the funds have already been allocated, is a wildfire truck, wildland fire.
Chris?
It's a truck that goes out in the grass, yes. And there's been some challenges actually getting a hold of the appropriate chassis for it, from what I understand. The box is being created and it will actually be established on top of the chassis they acquire. So it's, that's the only asset that is really required at the moment. Everything else, fire is aware of what their future needs are going to be, and there will be a sort of lay it out that we need to be looking at this and this and this as our community grows, as our requirement for helping our neighbors go as well.
All right,
We don't have a lot of grassland within our community, just to quiet.
I'm sorry?
I said, we don't have a lot of grassland within our community. And I
No.
look forward to seeing those budget requests.
We have a fair bit of surrounding, and it's about that response to
Yeah.
to community to keep Culver safe.
To keep it safe, absolutely.
Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we had approved the purchase of that vehicle in the capital budget from last year, and the county was actually pitching in for it, so it was a shared cost for that truck. But anyway, I have another comment. Is just in receiving this information and being here with the Director of Corporate Services, going through it. It's been really great information. I always like to go home and stew on things. I know I use that term stew a lot, but it just means I want to simmer in all this info. That being said, I would be comfortable making a motion to postpone this to a future meeting to make a decision.
yeah, because,
There is no decision point to be made today. This is again for council information and the stewing or pondering or good governance aspect of it absolutely is a takeaway. There was no request for decision today. It's purely for information to get you to set you on a low simmer. You'll have plenty of opportunity to become fully boiled in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, appreciate that.
so that's, go ahead.
I mean, what I want is for you to think about this. That's why we're ideally trying to move this process a couple months earlier and get going that way, so there's time to think about it and setting the passing of the budget in December. So you have time to think about it, to discuss it with residents, to consider and ponder and simmer and stew about whatever it is that is facing the community that you think should be included or not included, and giving the time for it to make those decisions.
So at this point, though, go ahead.
Thank you. Just looking at this here, can we get some information on the reserve levels and what they're kind of set aside for and everything like that? I'm looking at the tentative schedule and I didn't see anything really on there. And then also if we have any information on, I think MSI that's remaining or LGFF or anything like that that might be coming in, just to kind of get an idea of what we're working with for resources. I guess I'd be curious to see what is already allocated for projects and what would be available.
All right, so with this, we should probably make a motion to accept the report. Would somebody like to do that?
I'll make that.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
That we will accept for information purposes.
Yes.
The 2023 proposed operating budget.
All
I think
right,
that's just short and sweet, and with gratitude. I have to just quietly say, this is the first time I've seen it done this way in the 14 years I've been here, so having this time to be able to on your list is just fantastic. Thank you so much.
If I can,
Yes.
before you vote, also send my thanks and appreciation to Mike for the work that he's done. Good governance practices on the operations side include having a separate capital and operating budget. And he's gone through it in a way that you really have to take the tentacles apart. The two are totally linked. If you have a capital project, there are operating consequences to that. If you want to build things, you actually require the funds to generate, which comes from your operating budget. So what Mike has done is he's put something together for you that over the next couple of years, it's going to grow, it's going to be better. As he indicated, starting the process earlier will help you. Next year, you've got somebody competent sitting in the CAO position. To start the process earlier, have the conversations earlier, and move you through it. But my appreciation to the work that Mike has done to date, and all of the work he's going to do between now and December 6th. For sure.
Thank you.
There's an agenda attached to that.
Yeah,
Some preemptive gratitude.
Yes.
So Councillor Caldwell's made the motion to accept this information. Any discussion? Not, call the question, all in favor? That is carried, thank you. Okay, so then the next part here that we have is just correspondence. And so we do have 3 items on here. I'm just going to ask if someone would like to make a motion to accept the correspondence. Okay.
I move that the council accept the correspondence for information.
Great, thank you. And is there any discussion on any of the items there? Go ahead.
Just a question through to the CAO. Do we also notify them? Like, do we send out a letter notifying them of our notice, or is that just?
Through the mayor to Councillor Florence, I have about 16 letters to send out tomorrow. Actually, every external committee receives a letter, and the corporate appointments receive letters, the external organizations as well. So everybody will receive a letter updating as to who their member is.
Awesome, thank you.
Any further discussion? Not, I will call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So our next item here is going to close session. So I'm requesting that somebody make a motion to move into closed session at whatever time it is.
I'm going that we go into closed session at 8:42.
Thank you. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
go back about that. Yeah. Thank you.
Should we redo the motion then?
Do the motion. Yeah.
Okay. Motion to go back into open session.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'll make a motion, we go back into open session at 9:56.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried, thank you. And we don't have any business arising from the closed session, so I'm asking for a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:37.
I moved to adjourn at 9:37 PM.
Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? That's carried, thank you.